Farming is an everyday part of life that often gets overlooked. All of our food comes from farms, and they are a vital part of our society and culture. So this poses the question, how did farming, one of the most essential parts of life, come to be?
Before farming was even practiced, the main way to obtain food was through hunting and gathering. Hunting and gathering, although very efficient, could not support the growing population density. This led to the gradual development of domestication and agriculture. People began domesticating wild grasses like wheat, barley, and rye. This allowed for people to settle down and freed some of the people from the constant thought of feeding themselves.
With their freed minds and hands, people were able to create key innovations that helped them succeed. This was really exemplified in the Fertile Crescent, or Mesopotamia, or modern-day Iraq, Turkey, and Iran. This is where the Neolithic Revolution was born. Some of the major milestone inventions that propelled Mesopotamia to success were the wheel, systems of irrigation, smelting techniques, and the domestication of plants and animals.
These innovations led to Mesopotamians expanding their empire because they allowed them to produce an excess of food. Irrigation, for example, let the farmers grow their crops further away from the riverbeds of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. It also allowed them to access water without having to carry buckets to the cities.
Mesopotamians also domesticated plants and animals. By doing that, they created a year-round source of food that they did not need to hunt. Some of the first animals to be domesticated were sheep, goats, and cows. These animals also helped plow the fields that the crops grew in.
Eventually, Mesopotamia became too arid and ultimately infertile. The people were forced to leave and the civilization spread east and west. This gave different areas the farming technology, and the idea of agriculture spread. Out of Mesopotamia's demise, civilizations like Rome, Greece, China, and Egypt sprung up.
Mesopotamia's food developments impacted these new civilizations in many ways. It allowed them to develop and fine-tune the new innovations that the Mesopotamians were credited with inventing. An example would be how the Romans took the Mesopotamians' idea of irrigation and created the aqueduct, which allowed the Romans to irrigate lands miles away from the source. This technique helped to feed the population of Rome, which at its height was around 1 million people, and without it, this civilization would not have become as powerful.
But why did all of the Mesopotamian wealth of knowledge all go to the civilizations of the east and west latitudes and not the north and south ones? This all happened because of one reason: geographic luck. The regions east-west of Mesopotamia all have relatively similar climates and the same day lengths, so it made it easier to practice the same farming methods as the early Mesopotamians. It also made it easier for farming techniques to travel to different regions.
Another geographic luck factor is that the east-west civilizations were able to grow more powerful and had more abundant domesticable animals available to them, like the cow. Out of the 14 animals that can be domesticated, Europe and Asia have the most, while the north-south civilizations like Africa, Australia, and the Americas have the least amount of them.
These regions could not obtain the full power of the domesticated animals and the knowledge of the Mesopotamians. These civilizations did not succeed to the same degree as their counterparts, and thus food inequality was born.
These ancient civilizations eventually died off, but they still left Europe with all the wealth and power because of their geographic luck. Today, this can still be witnessed in our world, and this luck aspect has left some countries with major inequalities, especially food inequalities. However, with the power of education, we might be able to eliminate this food inequality problem.
Today, in our on-the-run lifestyles and the biggest bang for your buck mentalities, we have allowed industrial farms to take over our food choices. Today, about 80% of our food comes from 8 big companies. One of the main factors supporting this is the cheap rivers of corn running across America and the world. With the cheapest food with the most calories coming from the biggest companies, people are almost forced to buy it.
But there is hope to end global food inequality. Some potential solutions could be to create a more efficient agriculture technique with the help of today's modern technology. Another possible factor in ending food inequality is creating local food distributing systems to help spread non-industrial food at cheaper prices to at the farmer's convenience. Other ways to end food inequality are helping to stop government subsidies for corn by being active in your local community and supporting local organic farms instead.
We know that food inequalities happen on a global and national scales, but it also happens locally. Food inequality is when some parts of the population have access to better food and some parts don't. It is spread further by the government funding of corn for the unhealthy and processed foods and making them generally more available than the healthy, minimally processed foods.
Food inequality exists because of greed. Today, the people who have access to better quality food, like organic food, usually have more money. This is a big problem because it means that only the rich or better off people have access to healthy or organic foods. If only the rich have access to this food, it's unfair and only furthers the gap between people. Big greedy companies are always looking for and creating cheaper ways to make food, and this is just making the problem bigger.
We know local food inequality is a problem, so here are some measures to help stop it. Local food distributors like Farm Fresh RI can help provide people with food that is actually more nutritious than their factory farms counterparts and help fight food inequality. Buying from local food distributors or farmers also helps your local economy grow because you are keeping your money and jobs in state and in your town. If we really want to end food inequality, we need to support local farmers so that one day we will send more money out of state than in-state.
Specific programs that are organized by Farm Fresh RI to help end food inequality are Harvest Kitchen and Market Mobile. Harvest Kitchen is a kitchen that makes applesauce using old apples, but what makes them unique is that the kitchen is run by juvenile offenders and it gives them a second chance.
Market Mobile does a veggie box system. They help get local produce from farmers to consumers more efficiently and at lower prices. Market Mobile is also helping eliminate food deserts while also ending food inequality through this system. This is the story of how farming and food inequalities came to be. If you don't like that your neighbor or someone you know does not have access to the same food you have, then there has to be change. The only one with the power to solve food inequality and increase food security is you, the consumer. You have the ability to vote with your dollar and support local farms, to skip out on the McDonald's meal and buy veggies and make your own healthy meal. You could also vote to support the big businesses, and that's your choice. A documentary can only help show you which path to take, but if you want to see things change, then it is up to you to take that path and make them change.